Welcome back, everybody. In this lesson, we are going to look at how karate supports parallel execution of the tests. So, when you install karate, you would get its parallel execution by default. So, you don't basically have to do anything special. However, we have been working with a single thread so far. So when you install, uh, when you have a runner file, or at least the default runner file that comes with the Karate installation, if you look at that, it starts with parallel thread count of 5, but we have reduced it to 1. But irrespective of whether you write your own test runner or not, this is the place where you would control how many threads you would want to run your tests on against. So as many threads that you have over here, that is the level of parallelism you're trying to achieve, right? So we have been working with one thread so far, which means the tests were getting executed serially, that is one after the other. But like I said, if you can increase that number to increase the parallelism, just remember that runner has many other uh, functions that you can use, like path and text, that allows you to control which feature files you want to run based on paths or text. Just ensure that parallel is the has to be the last method called on there, right? So as long as you take care of that, uh, karate allows you to run those in parallel. Before we increase our thread count here, let's just see what we get when we run this with just one thread, right? So with no parallel execution, let's see how much time it takes, right? Because that is the main reason why you would want to uh, run things in parallel, to reduce the execution time so that your tests could run faster. Of course, your tests should be independent of each other. They should not be dependent, else the test might fail. Assuming that is the case, for instance, here, without any parallelism, it took about 10.56 seconds and it ran 35 scenarios. Let's just quickly look at the report here. And if I go in here, all this looks good. These many feature files is what I have, and all of these scenarios have passed. If I look at the timeline, you see there's only one thread, hence you see only one row over here. And if you look at over here, you see after one scenario ran, it's only then the next scenario is picked up, right? So you complete the whole scenario, then the next scenario is picked up, and the next and the next. So it runs, karate runs all the scenarios one after the other. That is serially because there's only one thread in this case. So you see this scenario is verify post 1, then you have post 2, then you have post 3. This feature file is data driven posts, right? So if I open this, and if you remember, we have three scenarios here. This is scenario, this is the last scenario, and it uses post data underscore JSON dot JSON. So in here there are three cases: user ID 1, user ID 2, and user ID 3. And then you have another scenario with another three test instances, and then the first one. So overall there are 9 instances in data driven post or feature, and that is what you see here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And you have data driven posts, 9 of those tests running one after the other in that feature file. And then it picks up the next feature file, which is env-switch, which is the next feature file is picked up. Again, it has two scenarios, and if you see, this is the first one that it picked up, and then the next, and then it moves on to the next feature file, and so on and so forth. Right now, let's just change uh, in the parallel function. Let me update the thread count to 3. Now we expect 3 uh, tests to run in parallel and rerun this. You remember it took about 10 to 11 seconds to uh, complete the uh, full of my feature files. And let's see how this works. So this is slightly better. Again, it will depend on what your computer is doing at the time. Yeah, I've run this a couple of times and I've got numbers from 6 to 10 so far, but it is slightly better. You can see here that it has run it is running three threads. And let's go and look at the timeline this time. If I run the timeline, you see here there are three threads now, and all of them are running each of these tests in parallel. So this data driven post feature, if you remember, there were three scenarios and each scenario had three test instances. So altogether there were nine instances to be tested. You see three and the other three are working in parallel, and then it moves on to uh, the next feature file and the scenarios there. In env.switch, there were only two scenarios. So the third thread was free to pick up a totally new feature file altogether, right? So the parallelism is not just within scenarios in a feature file, but among feature files as well, right? So that is how you get parallelism in karate. Now the question is, what if you don't want the test to run in parallel? First of all, when would you want such a thing, right? Ideally, you would want the execution time to be as minimal as possible. So you would, in most cases, want parallelism, but there may be cases where uh, one test scenario might be dependent on the other and it cannot run before the previous one runs. In such a case, you might want such test cases to to run serially and not parallelly. But there could be other scenarios, depending on your machine and other things like that, where you strictly would not want the test to run in parallel. However, I don't see that to be the general case. If you have uh, mutually exclusive independent test cases, ideally you would want, but let's just say if you had to, one way like we have been doing is to control it at this level, that is just use it as one, right? So which means, like we have seen earlier, it will always run test one after the other. But what if generally you want the things to go run in parallel, but there are only certain test cases that you don't want to run parallelly? So let's just say on data driven feature, this feature file, all of these test cases, let's say they are dependent on one another. So you don't want these test cases to run parallelly, but rest all the feature files and the scenarios in those feature files, you do want them to run parallelly. In that case, you use a special tag called as at parallel equal to false, right? So if you set this uh, right, so if you set this tag to false, now if you run this uh, test again, now we expect all these nine test cases to run one after the other serially, and once those are run, we expect all the other tests to run parallelly, right? So we have three threads still. Let's see how our new report looks like. If I run this, if I go to timeline, so if you see my first nine test cases, all inside data-driven posts, will be run one after the other. So the thread 1, thread 2, and thread 3, they run all of them serially. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I think this is the ninth one, right? Yeah. And once this has run the other test, so if you see this is run, only then the next data driven is run, and only then the next data driven is run. But because this is distributed beforehand, thread 1 is now free while the other the last two data driven post tests were still underway. Because thread 1 was free, it was still free to pick up the next feature file, right? But the idea is, because you said at this level to because you said this feature should not run in parallel, that is why uh, they were on all the scenarios in that feature file were run one after the other serially, and all the others were run parallelly. So that is how you control uh, whether you want to run a test parallelly or serially. Uh, One other thing is you might uh, uh, want to put this as false at the scenario level. So for instance, if you want only this scenario to run, all the tests in this scenario to run one after the other, but you are okay with all the other scenarios in this feature file to run parallelly. Let's see how this works now. So in this scenario, we only expect the first three test instances to run one after the other. Everything else, including the scenarios in this feature file, to run parallelly. So if I go back here, you see my first test case, second test case, and third test case, and thereafter everything runs in parallel, including all the other scenarios in this feature file. So there you go. That is how parallelism works in karate tests. I hope you found this useful. I'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you.